Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad you're here today. I guess I did okay last time. They invited me to come back and talk again. So Mark asked me to share my story today. And so I began to think about what I was going to talk about. Was I going to tell you about my wife and family and background and upbringing, or talk about maybe my work that I've been doing over the last 30 years or so, or we've adopted kids, and I'm a foster care advocate and a foster parent, so I thought we have special needs children, so I could talk a little about that. And or I could talk about technology and digital media and all the things that I'm into right now. Or I could tell you a little bit about my personal story, a salvation story. But what I actually decided to do this morning, since this is a group of leaders, is to talk about my story in the context of influence. Who are some of the people who have influenced my life? Because the people in this room are basically influencers. You're influencing others all the time. So I actually believe that as a leader, being a person of influence is probably the most important facet of leadership. The Bible has a lot to say about being an influence as a leader. You probably heard Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. Or how about Matthew 5:14 through 16? You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but instead on a lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who's in heaven. Clearly, the Bible has a lot to say about being an influence and to lead through influence, being a light to others. Many years ago, I attended a leadership conference, and one of the speakers at this leadership conference was General Norman Schwarzkopf. He was the commander of all the combined forces in the 1991 Gulf War. You guys probably all remember, the TV briefings, and they have the TV screen. They show the bomb going down the chimney and all that. And at the time, he led 750,000 troops and thousands of tanks and combat aircraft and 6 carrier battle groups. In fact, it was the largest, most lethal fighting force ever assembled up until that time. And at this conference, Schwarzkopf said 2 memorable things to me about leadership. The first thing he said was, when placed in command, take charge. In other words, if you've been put in a position of leadership, then for God's sake, lead. And that really stuck with me. But today we've got to really think about, what does that mean? What does it mean to lead? You look at our leadership today at every level, from the community leadership all the way to the national leadership, and I don't think people really know what it means to lead anymore. Are leaders supposed to be just peacemakers, or social justice warriors, or woke activists, or moral compasses? What does it mean to lead? Schwarzkopf, after he said that, then said this: leadership is a potent combination of strategy and character. But if you must be without one, be without strategy. And I thought that was interesting, coming from a military commander. If you had a choice between strategy and character, forget the strategy, go with character. So these are wise words. And as a leader, your biggest impact in life, in marriage, in your workplace, is not going to be the decisions that you make or the path on which you lead your organization. No, it's going to be the influence of your character on those that you lead. Ultimately, that'll be your legacy in leadership. I think the key question is not that you make a bunch of right decisions and make a difference that way, but did you lead somebody else to know how to make those decisions? Because if we don't, what's going to happen is a generation after we're gone, that lack of leadership skill is going to result in a generation of people who just let everything go to pieces. So today what I thought I would do is share with you 3 little nuggets of leadership that I got from people who influenced me personally, my life. And they were lived out by these people. And the idea is that these men passed on aspects of their character to me. They helped make me the person I am today. And as you listen, I want you to think about how your life and the content of your character influences people around you. All right, so this is my first person. This is a guy named Ralph Dewberry. For those of you who are online, I'll let you see that. Ralph Dewberry and his wife Ann. Ralph is a friend and mentor to me, and for several years I served as a vice president at his company. And at the time I was there, Ralph was in his early 60s. And one day I asked him what he planned to do when he retired. And he said, what he said surprised me. He says, "Gene, retire?" He said, "I'm not going to retire. I'm never going to retire." He goes, "Did you know there's no concept of retirement in the Bible?" And I said, "What?" And I looked it up, and you know what? He was right. God never tells us to retire. It was fascinating. So I said, "Hey, what are you going to do if you don't retire?" He said, "I'm going to keep doing what I can do as long as I can do it." And, you know, his advice to me was simple: don't quit. Don't quit. Do what you can do to the best of your ability as long as you can do it. Never think that as a leader you've done all that you can do, because you haven't. Some of you in this room are retired, and the reality is that your leadership potential, can I be honest, is greater right now than at any other time in your life, because you've got the time to lead. You've got the time to influence. You've got the time to pass on the knowledge and wisdom you have to other people. Don't quit. This is a simple instruction that's lived in me for 20 plus years now. Ralph is in his 80s today, and he's still working. He just built a $6 million building for his company. This next person I'm going to tell you about, you guys know. This is our beloved leader who's on the beach right now, Mark Maynard. And this is a picture of Mark and I in Central Africa in 2013. And I was doing a project with Mark there. And so one day we were traveling around the little villages there, and we were giving out food to people who needed it. And we came upon this one house, and they had 12 kids in there. And so we were greeting the people, and we noticed one of the kids was missing. There's only 11 kids. So we're like, where's the older daughter? Where's the eldest daughter who's supposed to be here? And one of the other kids said, "Oh, she's sick. She's up on the hill. She's possessed by the devil." And so I was like, uh-oh, this is going to get weird. And so Mark, without skipping a beat, looked over to me and he goes, "Hey, you want to go perform an exorcism?" And so I got a little queasy. I was like, I've seen some movies when I was little, and I don't want to have any part of this. I'm going to tell you, Mark, without skipping a beat, he went straight up the hill. And so I followed him up there, and we see this young girl, and sure enough, she is on the ground, and she is doubled up on herself, and she's writhing in pain and moaning and groaning, and it looks really strange. And Mark said, "Hey, has this ever happened to her before?" And one of the brothers or sisters said, "Yeah, it happened to her last month, and the month before that." So all of a sudden we knew what was happening. Here was a young teenage girl having her period with no medication. You didn't have medication there in Central Africa. And so we were able to get her some medical attention and get her back on her feet. But you know what I learned from Mark there is don't hesitate. When you see a challenge, climb the hill. Go for it. You don't know if it's a challenge or an opportunity. In our case, it was an opportunity to do something good for somebody who needed some help. And that stuck with me as well. You know, when something's in front of you, don't hesitate to climb the hill. So don't quit, climb the hill. Here's a third nugget of leadership. So this guy You can see him. This guy is Dr. Richard Harvey. And Dr. Harvey, online people, let me make sure you see that. Dr. Harvey is a heart surgeon. So in October of 2019, it was Monday morning, I was at work, and I was in a meeting, and I didn't feel very well. And so some of the people I was meeting with were like, "You look kind of pale. You need to go see the doctor." And so I had a friend who drove me to the emergency room, and they laid me down on a gurney and were hooking me up and getting ready to run some tests, and I was just everything's calm. It was about 2 minutes in, and then all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. They started bringing in the carts. "Mr. Mason, we're going to put this in your arm." They put an oxygen mask on me. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, "Hey, what's the matter?" And the nurse who was sitting back behind the monitor said, "Oh, baby, you're having a heart attack." And I literally had a heart attack right there in the emergency room. But then, right as she said that, you imagine how scared you are when you hear that, no matter where you are. Dr. Harvey walks in, and he said something to me I will never forget. He said, "Mr. Mason, you're going to be okay. In fact, you're in the very best place for this to happen." And you know what? He was right. Everyone in that room knew exactly what to do if somebody was having a heart attack. And they had all the medical instruments and all the medications and everything right at their fingertips. And Dr. Harvey was a heart surgeon. He ended up giving me a triple bypass the next morning. And there was a cardiac ICU right upstairs from where I was at that moment that handled hundreds of these patients every year. So when a crisis happened, I was in the very best place for that to happen, which brings us to Friday morning men's fellowship. And the idea here is when a crisis comes in your life, and when you're under attack, and when you're going through a storm, either of your own making or of somebody else's making, well, you want to be in the very best place to be for that to happen. And you want to be surrounded by men who will encourage you and give you wise counsel and give you wisdom and expertise and experience, because they themselves may have been exactly where you are now. I've been involved for Friday mornings men's fellowship for a couple of years now, and at first I had a difficult time explaining to people exactly what this was. And then at one point it hit me. Friday morning men's fellowship, I know exactly what it is now. It's one of the best places you can possibly be when life happens, because of the support and the encouragement and the wisdom that's available here. So there you go. Three little bits of wisdom from three different men who I've had the privilege of knowing in my life. And of course there have been many other people. I didn't say anything that my dad taught me or my pastor or my brother or friends. But when you look at my life to this point, I can tell you absolutely that I am not a self-made man. When I look at my life, I see people who've shaped my life and had an influence on my life and had an impact on my life in some big ways and small ways. But the fact is that every man in this room has the potential to be a profound influence on the people around them. There are moments of character in your own lives, and through your example and your conversation, the knowledge that you have in your decision making and your table discussion and prayer and your faith, these moments will become bits of wisdom you can plant in the lives of the men around you. Just like, don't quit, climb the hill, be in the best place for life to happen. I mentioned General Norman Schwarzkopf at the beginning of the talk. Here's something said by another military leader. A true leader has the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and listen to this, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. He does not set out to be a leader, but becomes one by the equality of his actions and the integrity of his intent. That was Douglas MacArthur. from World War II, and he too was right. Proverbs echoes this in another way. It says this: "The integrity of the upright guides him. He knows that to do what is right and just is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. So let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Give care and thought to the paths for your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways." Now we need these men. We need these Proverbs men who lead with integrity and compassion, and who lead others down straight paths, right? We need you men to be intentional leaders of character and spend your time influencing those around you. I was listening a couple of days ago to one of Chris White Sr.'s talks from years ago. I was preparing some material for the next issue of Leadership Circle, and he was talking from the book of Nehemiah. And he was speaking on leadership, and this must have been 10 or 15 years ago because it was audio. And he was mentioning the moral decay and leadership decay in our country at the time. And the flavor of this talk was, we don't have much time left to turn things around. And this was 15 years ago. Chris, if you're watching today, man, what a prophetic word, right? And here we are 15 years on, and we're like, oh, we're more down the rabbit hole than we thought. But we're in desperate, desperate need of strong male leaders. And so I want to challenge you today in your leadership, not so much to find a soapbox or a campaign or to take a decision-making course and get on a bullhorn and say the sky is falling. None of that. What I want to do is challenge you instead to determine today to be a person of influence, and intentionally spend time every day pouring in to the people around you. Pour into your spouse, pour into your kids, pour into your grandkids, pour into people you work with, pour into people you go to golf with. Whatever circle that you have of influence, use that to the very best of your ability. It absolutely makes a difference. 3 simple phrases from 3 men that I've carried with me and used in my life for 20 plus years. The Harvard Business Review did a study a number of years ago, and they said the average leader influences 72 people every year. That seemed like a big number, but then I started to think about the people that are in my Sunday school class and the people I hang out with and go to dinner with, and we're couple friends with, and golf with, and the people I work with. And I thought, well, maybe that number's a little small. Well, that means if there's 125 guys involved right now in this location of Friday morning men's fellowship, that group alone is going to influence 9,000 people a year. And we do that for a number of years, and those people influence other people. Is there any reason to think that a group like this can't have a profound impact on their community and on their city and on their world? I believe it's absolutely possible. So I thank you very much for listening to me today. And my challenge to you is be a man of influence. Let's pray. Father God, I thank you for these men who've been an influence in my life, Mark and Dr. Harvey and Ralph. I thank you that they took the time to invest in me, and I thank you for what I've learned from them. And then what I've learned from them is of you. God, I pray now that we are men of impact and influence, that we are more than leaders who make good decisions, but we are leaders who build other leaders. May it be so in our lives each and every day. I pray this in your name. Amen. All right, everybody.